Chris, Lee and Blayne Gilmer of Southeastern 14 here. We're continuing our preview of SEC football teams for the 2022 season. Blayne, we get to the Florida Gators, yet another team that had an offseason coaching change, a team that you could make a case being in the mix for number 2 overall in the SEC, although most probably have not. But however you slice it, a very interesting team going into this season.
Yeah, it for sure. Interesting would be the key term when you're talking about the Florida Gators. Obviously, used to being a perennial power and have just two seasons removed from playing in the SEC title game against Alabama, or in the COVID year against Alabama. And man, it took a turn for the worse in a hurry at the end of the Dan Mullen era. And now, like you said, Billy Napier at the helm, and heck, he's even brought some Raging Cajuns with him that we'll talk about on this team here in a little bit from Louisiana Lafayette. So a lot of excitement in the swamp, to your point, but a lot of intrigue as well.
I thought that was a great hire. I thought that was just what they needed.
I'm directly the opposite. I think
really.
I think that you had a quarterback in Anthony Richardson who, the main thing that he needed was development as a quarterback, right? He's a tremendous athlete, but he needed to develop as a passer. What is the one thing that Dan Mullen has proven he can do? He can develop. He can develop quarterbacks. He can take a Kyle Trask who was never, not even offered scholarships by people, and turn him into arguably playing the best quarterback in the country that year that he took Florida to the SEC championship game. What he did with Dak Prescott, who yes, I know Dak Prescott's great in the NFL, but nobody had heard of Dak Prescott before Dan Mullen got a hold of him. So I think that Dan Mullen actually was a really good fit for Anthony Richardson. I'm sure Billy Napier will be too with his scheme, but I think that people let the talk of recruiting and some of the sound bites get in the way. Obviously, the team gave up on Mullen. But I think I'm just not a big proponent on a lot of these schools changing coaches too quickly in terms of a tenure. I miss the days where guys would get a long time to develop their team and things of that nature.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. And I mean, the 10 and 11 year seasons for Dan Mullen weren't that long ago. And look, he had Mississippi State in contention for a playoff berth there too. So I think that it's weird how one half season can sink a coach anymore. One bad half season, and I mean, look, these guys were in every bit in the game with Alabama and darn near beat Alabama at the end of September last year. So I guess I'm going in a different direction with my point, which I'll make in a minute. But I don't necessarily disagree with yours either.
Yeah, now in terms of in a vacuum, Billy Napier seems to be a great coach in terms of being from the Saban coaching tree, having spent time at Clemson as well. So he's been around winning football. He comes from a football family in terms of his dad being a longtime coach and things of that nature. But when it comes down to it, it's largely you go and look at the state of Florida in this offseason, okay? You had Miami, who's a program that many consider to be a more damaged brand maybe going into this offseason than what Florida was. But who was Miami able to go get? They were able to go get a proven Power 5 head coach in Mario Cristobal versus a unproven Billy Napier. Now, people can say, scared money don't make money and all this kind of stuff that they're excited about. But I think there's a lot to be proven down there. Same for Cristobal at Miami. But if I'm grading those two hires, I think the Canes came out better on top of that one. But I think that Billy Napier has done a lot to get going here to kind of kickstart. I don't know if you saw on Twitter, but Florida released their team picture on Twitter. Chris, I swear there's more staff members and coaches than there are players on that team. So Billy Napier has added staff. He's getting the support system in place. Heck, this offseason, Florida took Katie Turner, who was the director of on-campus recruiting for Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs. He took her right out from under Kirby Smart's nose. So basically, she can tell him where all the bodies are buried in terms of Georgia football recruiting, and can do well in his own. And Florida recruiting is one thing it has done. Dan Mullen did not recruit that great, especially inside the state of Florida. Billy Napier has kicked the recruiting up to a whole nother level, especially in the class of 2023.
It's almost like he learned a little something from Nick Saban.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit.
Just a little well, and here's where I'm going, okay? That program was just a streaming police blotter at times. And that was that way under Urban Meyer, too. And I guess you could say, well, they won. I mean, they had a murderer on the team, and it didn't seem to affect, the number to the left of the dash column. But Billy Napier's kind of a no-nonsense guy. He's going to run a clean program. He's going to bring discipline and lots of other things across that program. And I just think, I mean, you remember the shoe toss, just so many discipline things where, like, man, just with a little bit of that, what could you guys have been? And I think that's what I liked, among other things, about that hire.
Yeah, some discipline. Billy Napier seems to be more of a disciplinarian. I will say where Dan Mullen fell flat is you would see a lot of these behind the scenes, pregame talks, and especially with Georgia, Florida, right? You would see the Kirby Smart and the famous leaked Kirby Smart halftime speech where it was very
passionate,
not PG rated, so to speak. And Dan Mullen's, I'm not saying you gotta cuss and do all that kind of stuff for your players to get them motivated, but his were just very more docile. You could definitely see which team was going to be more fired up coming out of after those speeches. And I think Billy Napier is more of that blue collar type guy, a guy that's going to kind of be in there and bring that excitement, that energy. Young head coach, so we'll see how things play out on that, because there's more than just having to do it. Everybody started somewhere, right? And Billy Napier, it just happens that his first Power 5 head gig is at the University of Florida, with a lot of high expectations there that come along with it.
When Dan Mullen spoke, it felt like you were listening to an air traffic controller sometimes. He just had that voice.
Which I'm wondering how that works out with ESPN, so we'll see how things work out at ESPN. But I'm sure Mullen will actually be great on ESPN.
Yeah, well, I mean, he knows his football. I think it'll pan out okay. Those guys end up usually doing okay on TV. But
no doubt.
Let's talk about the team. Any other year, Anthony Richardson is probably getting all SEC love, maybe some Heisman hype. I mean, remember the backflips, just the incredible stretches of play where he would come in games and just put up these video game numbers. It's not a good year to be a quarterback in the SEC if honors are what you're looking for. But man, that
not when you have the returning Heisman Trophy winner.
Right. But I mean, look, he's got all kinds of skills. They've got a lot of receivers back. They've got some guys out of the backfield who can catch passes. I'm very interested to see what he does this year.
Yeah, it's kind of, Jekyll and Hyde, right? Which Anthony Richardson are you going to get? At times you saw one true. That was an absolutely game-breaking quarterback that has, elite speed and is able to hurt you with his legs, has a cannon for an arm. It's just, where's the ball going at times? And that may have been just not having a full grasp as a young player coming in, learning everything in Mullen's system. He's had a full off season of being the guy for Billy Napier, learning this offense, things like that. They say is, everything I've heard from people around the Florida program is that the leadership qualities are there. And I think that's the most important thing that you can have out of a quarterback, other than the measurables and the athleticism, is do people believe in him? Is he a leader? And it seems that Anthony Richardson is being that for the Florida Gators, at least right now. But, Chris, it's just all how well is he going to value the football? It looked like he did that well in the spring game, protected the ball, completed the throws that were there to complete. And they didn't run him too much in the spring, but I have a feeling that you'll see him use those legs, as Billy Napier has proven that he is not adverse to running the quarterback, especially during his time at Louisiana Lafayette.
Well, he's going to have some help. Billy Napier brought maybe his best two players with him in offensive lineman Osiris Torrance, running back Montreal Johnson. They've got some other guys in the room at running back, Naquan Wright. I mean, this is the team. It seemed like, depending on who you listen to, I don't know, the takes on them sometimes have been a little lukewarm, but I see some parts here they can work with.
Yeah, there's some people that think that Florida's the team that can challenge Georgia in the East and can come back, and really it was all a aberration on defense. They had just kind of thrown in the towel, given up on Mullen, things like that. But I kind of tend to think, and then some people think they're going to go under 500 and miss a bowl game and stuff like that. I think it's somewhere in the middle, honestly, of those two projections. But you're right. Absolutely. I think Montreal Johnson is a guy that I love the way that he runs the football, keeps his shoulders square to the line of scrimmage, it really has good vision, is a one cut guy, and is sudden when he makes his cut, and really kind of stays behind those pads. Had a couple of touchdowns in the spring game. So I think he's a guy that obviously he fits into what Billy Napier wants to do, came over with him, and adding Osiris Torrance at the offensive line, that's already adding to, some starters that were already there. Richard Gurriage has played a ton of football at left tackle for Florida. He's coming back as a redshirt senior. And then they've got Kinsley Aguakon at center as well. So some tried and true offensive linemen there. So they'll have some experience up front, but that's something that Florida is going to have to be able to do and commit more to doing, is being able to really run the football, because I know at times, especially in their rivalry against Georgia, because that's who, it seems like the East has come down to the last several years, they've not been able to run the football against the Kirby Smart defense. And I think that's something you have to be able to do to survive that Georgia defense, because if they know that you're going to be passing the ball, then all those talented pass rushers just get to pin their ears back and come after you.
Well, speaking of defense, I'm going to be very intrigued to watch them, because I think they can generate a pass rush with Cox and Dexter up front. I don't know that they got the DBs they usually have. It seems like they've always got a first-round corner or a high draft pick at safety, usually both. But, I mean, those two up front are a good start. I think the concern maybe there is depth. I don't think that this is a football team that's perceived as being particularly deep across the board, although I'd argue that running back room is pretty deep. But I think especially on defense is where people have raised concerns.
Yeah, they're 85th in the country last year, allowing over 163 yards per game rushing. So that is my big takeaway with Florida. And we're going to find, it isn't going to take long to find out, because game 1 and game 2, they're facing two teams that want to run the football. And that is Utah and that is Kentucky. Now, I know Kentucky is going to have a different look. Chris Rodriguez is going to be suspended early on, probably suspended for that Florida game. But when it comes down to it, Utah is a team that has two guys returning that started 14 on the offensive line, 14 games on the offensive line last year, and had a combination of 6 other guys that started at least 3 games for him last year. So a lot of experience, a lot of size. They're averaging 6'3", 300 pounds across that offensive line. So opening game, what do those defensive linemen for Florida, how do they hold up? You mentioned Gervin Dexter, in the middle. Desmond Watson, Chris McClellan is a freshman that they're going to be relying on up front. Jalen Lee. So they've got a lot of guys that they're going to be dependent upon to kind of stop the run. And if they can't do that early, that's going to be able to allow that Utah team to kind of, take that swamp crowd out of it a little bit. But that Florida's going to be juiced up, playing at home, night game, game 1. It's going to be, that may be the game I'm looking forward to the most, week 1.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I don't know that I'd say the most, but it's close, just because I want to see, like, what was real, right? Was it more like the first half where they played with Alabama, could have won the game, boat race Tennessee. I tend to think they were closer to that team than the team that darn near got beat by Samford. I think at that point they'd just given up. But It's not the same team as a year ago, and I'm intrigued by that one too. By the way, What do you think Dexter's playing weight will be this year?
I don't know. I don't know that.
I've
I know
never
that's
seen a guy
been
like that. Have you?
no. I've not. Gervin Dexter is someone who he was a tremendous prospect coming out. He's actually he's has had a really good
I'm sorry.
career.
I'm sorry. I meant Desmond Watson. I'm thinking one thing and saying another.
Oh, Desmond Watson. Yeah,
The
he was
415
huge.
pounder. Yeah.
He was absolutely monstrous, and he runs out there wearing number 21, and you're like, it looks like they go Chris Farley, fat guy in a little coat out there, and he's coming out there. So anytime I see a huge man wearing a running back number, I'm all for it. Go ahead, let's do it. I like that. But Desmond Watson, hey, we mentioned needing to be able to stop the run, right? Well, throwing a guy out there that's upwards of 4 bills, that'll plug up a gap, maybe two. So we'll see how much he's used. But much like a Jordan Davis early on in his career, weight was an issue at Georgia. The thing with those kind of guys is they get gassed, right?
Yeah.
So if teams go tempo and things like that, so you're gonna have to be careful how they use him. But if Jalen Lee, Desmond Watson, Gervin Dexter, Chris McClellan, if those guys in that interior defensive line can hold up against the run, then they've got some experienced linebackers coming out. They got Ventrell Miller that's coming out. They got DeJuan Black that is coming back. Both seniors that provide leadership at that inside linebacker position. And Ventrell Miller, quite honestly, has had some injury stuff here and there, but I think he's a guy that they're really looking to be productive on the second level of that defense for him.
Feels like he's been there forever.
Yeah, no doubt. Him and then they're experienced at safety as well. They got Rashad Torrance and Trey Dean going to be providing leadership at the back end. So at least I don't know if the depth is there right now, Chris, but the starting 11 you're running out for Florida on defense has been it. Whether that's good experience or bad experience, sometimes experience is in the eye of the beholder, right? But there's a lot of experience there on that Florida defense.
Well, they gave up almost 27 points a game a year ago. But again, you throw out the part where they'd thrown in the towel, and those numbers look a lot better. And if you've got...
they get less skewed.
yeah, and you've got, 7 starters coming back on that side of the ball. I just think that's
what I'm saying.
Maybe that's a storyline that people are sleeping on a bit.
Yeah, we'll see if the toughness, the kind of grit that Billy Napier, naturally kind of brings across with him, how much that transfers over to the defense. He's going with Patrick Toney and Sean Spencer as co-defensive coordinators over there for Florida. So he's worked with those guys before, so there's some rapport there. So we'll see how it all turns out for that Florida defense. But you're right, experience and an influx of a couple of transfers here and there. And that's the name of the game now, Chris, is how fast can you turn over that roster and then implement your new system in this high-paced coaching turnover world.
Another thing worth mentioning, and I'm bringing this up a lot lately because I think there's going to be close games all over the place. And sometimes it's making that kick or missing that kick. And they've got a freshman kicker in Trey Smack who's gifted, but last I checked, he'd not won the job yet. I mean, how camps go. Their coaches protect this stuff like nuclear secrets, but that's something that I've got my eye on just a little bit with Florida is how that resolves.
Special teams, people, it's a third of the game is the old cliche, the plays that are being put out there on the field. But place kicking, it seems like it never rears its head until you need it to, right, Chris? Until you don't pay attention to that kicker until it's games on the line and you got to make that kick. And Florida's had some really good place kickers over the years.
They have been really hot or cold. It seems like they've either had like All-American types or they had like some years under Muschamp where like they'd hit 3 field goals all year, and if it was anything further than extra point, you couldn't trust anybody to kick it. So it's been a weird kicking situation down there.
Hey, in the state of Mississippi, Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin, they're going to the frat house and going to try to find guys that used to kick in high school. So,
Right.
hey, at least they've got a scholarship guy there in Florida. The kicking game, man, it's very fickle at times. But like you said, it's kind of feast or famine on special teams at times. So,
Yeah.
uh, we'll see how the special teams turn out for Billy Napier year one, and hopefully that's the Florida fans would love it if there's just not much thought of special teams, because that
Right.
means there's not much issues.
Well, I mean, they should always be good at special teams. That's a big soccer state. People are outdoors year round. You got, Florida over the last 30 years, probably the fastest program in the league.
Yeah.
Alabama might take exception to that, but I mean, Gators always got talent, used in punt and kickoff returns. So, although that's less a part of the game than it used to be, but still, point is they ought to be pretty good there. Okay. Any parting thoughts with the Gators that we didn't get to? I mean, the schedule. I'll tell you one thing: the schedule. Florida could conceivably be underdogs 3 of the first 4 games.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to Tennessee, Kentucky, and Utah, kind of in reverse order, they've got South Florida mixed in there as well. But I've been pretty adamant that I think Utah is one of the best teams in the country. They just have such experience, on the offensive line. They've got one of the best running backs in the country in Tavion Thomas and Cameron Rising, who's getting more and more NFL buzz, it seems, as this offseason builds with the spectacular performance he put forth against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. So, it's going to be interesting game one. And then you face another guy who's getting first round love in Will Levis game 2. And then, of course, Hendon Hooker in game 4. So they're facing 3 really good quarterbacks to start the season off. So to your point, Chris, that defense, which was the kind of the Achilles heel in that second half of the year for Florida, it's going to get tested early. They're going to find out their identity. But the good news is for Florida, they have those first 2 games at home against Utah and against Kentucky. So at least you get to try to weather the storm in friendly territory.
Okay, here's a good question for you. What's a successful first 4 games for Florida? Is that 2-2?
I mean, I think the Florida fans are going to tell you the first 4 games.
They won't be happy with that.
It's got to be 4-0. Like that's what they're wanting. But I think that the good thing for Billy Napier is, hey, he's got a new job. He's the head coach at Florida. Florida's investing. They're building new facilities. They're giving his coaches salary, increase in salaries. They're hiring more additional staff, giving them unbelievably creative, made up job titles. By the way, there are some. You go look at some of those job titles. I mean, just chef's kiss how they're doing some of that stuff over there. But when it comes down to it, it's also a bad time to be coming on as Florida's head coach, because you got Shane Beamer, who is doing good things and getting that South Carolina program on the rise. Josh Heupel, year 2. So you are a year behind South Carolina and Tennessee when it comes to instilling your culture, getting through, how people got to remember the first time that Florida is going to line up under Billy Napier in an actual game environment, it's against, like I said, Utah, who's preseason top 5 team unanimously in a lot of places that you look, they're getting top 5 recognition. And people don't realize, from as a former coach myself, there's some things you got to work out that first game, like making sure that you have all your process, how the special teams, where they're going to collect on the sideline, how it's going to go in and out. Now, I know you practice all that stuff over and over, and your process is over and over, but still, Chris, when the live bullets are flying, when the people in the stands are juiced up and going after it, there's Tom Petty blaring over there in Florida, all this kind of stuff. You got to work all these things out for the first time. So it's going to be interesting to see that dynamic of this as well.
Did you ever get to see Tom Petty in concert?
I can't say I did.
You missed out. Phenomenal show. Phenomenal show.
I hear you. I would have loved to seen that for sure. But they're hoping that when Tom Petty plays, they got the lead down there in the swamp. That's the hope for Gator fans.
Well, it'll be interesting in Florida, which would be a nice change from the end of last season when the only thing that was interesting was the coaching hire. But talented team, good coach. I'm very eager to see if the Gators can challenge for second in the East. I think there'll be a real threat there.
Seven and a
it wouldn't
half
shock
is
me
the
if they do
over
it.
under. 7.5 is the over under. You
Oh
taking
man,
the over under on the win total. 7.5 is what Vegas has got it at.
A&M and Georgia will be tough. Those are, let's see, both on the, well, one's neutral site. A&M's on the road. Utah's tough. Well, I don't know. That seems like about the right number to me. Man, if
I'm
you put a
taking
gun,
under.
if my life depends on it, I might go over. Just because I think there's still
So
talent
you're
on that
saying they
team,
win
and
at least 8?
well, I look, I wouldn't put a dollar on that either way because I think it's a great line, but I don't know if my life. I'm just a Billy Napier fan.
Yeah.
I'm a Richardson. I just think they've got some parts. The depth scares me. The schedule's terrifying, but I don't know. That's saying
Yeah,
they're going to lose 5
I think
games in
the
the regular
depth on
season.
that I think the depth on that defense is going to be my biggest issue. And if they weren't playing, if they weren't playing Utah first game, because here's the problem with that, Chris, is that let's say you beat Utah, right, in the first game. You're not going to beat them without having known you're in an absolute physical war. I mean, Utah is going to be one of the most physical teams in the country, and then you got to turn around week 2 and face
Kentucky.
a Kentucky team that's very physical. So it's the depth and the toll that's going to take on your body those first 2 weeks with those players. That's what scares me and makes me think that I would lean on taking the under. If the line's 7.5, I'm going to say they win 7 or less this year.
Well, let me cover my bases, hedge my bets, or take the coward's way out. Maybe I think this is an 8 or 9 win type team. I don't know if
Really?
the schedule and the structure allows it to get there.
Yeah.
Because of what you just said. I mean, I think that start to September is just brutal. Brutal.
It is brutal. But hey, to your point, the one thing that can equalize for depth on defense, as we saw with LSU in 2019, Joe Burrow is a quarterback that has a transcendent year. And if Anthony Richardson is what some people say he is, some people are saying he's a Heisman Trophy contender. Some people are saying that he could potentially be the number 9, as high as the number 9 overall pick in the NFL draft next year. I've seen that in mock drafts. That blows all that defensive depth stuff out of the water, because if he's that kind of player, then he's going to be able to use, Justin Shorter, Xavier Henderson, Trent Whittemore, all these targets that he has returning on the outside, and then his legs on top of it, combined with Montreal Johnson, Naquan Wright in the backfield. They've got weapons. Keon Zippier tight end. I mean, they've got weapons. So if he can effectively distribute and value the football, like we said, then that could be the magic bullet right there to get him up over that 8-win mark.
I've heard the really smart people are taking him as their fantasy football quarterback.
Hey, some people do that kind of thing.
Some people do that, I hear. So
absolutely.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed our preview of the Gators. If we have not previewed your SEC team, we're going to. Best way to catch all that is to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.